Normally when I do these used PC builds, I tend to target the lower end of the performance spectrum. And that's because if you're trying to save a lot of money with a used PC, it makes sense to target that level of performance. But today we're not doing that, because today we're going with an ultimate used PC build. That's right, this isn't just going to be a gaming PC. This is going to be in everything you want it to be PC. It's going to crush heavy workloads and it's going to fly through games at 1440p. That's right, we're not even bothering with 1080 on this one. It is going to be a high-end experience with a low-end price tag. So let's see how we do. Hey everyone, this is Frank and welcome back to Jaeger Tech. If you can't already tell, I'm pretty excited about today's build, and that's because we're not just building a gaming PC. I want this to be able to handle basically anything. So it's going to have a couple of extra CPU cores in there to handle those more heavily threaded workloads, but it's also going to have a lot of expansion options so that you can tailor and customize this PC with adding cards or extra drives so that it can handle pretty much whatever you throw at it. Of course, we're going to be overclocking it, and it's going to have some pretty interesting hardware in there. So let's talk about that for a minute. The basis of this build is an X58 system I got off of eBay. So I was looking for an X58 motherboard for this build, and this system was a pretty decent price, so I managed to pick it up for £250. However, it took a pretty bad blow in shipping, severely damaging the case and the graphics card. So I was able to get a £50 partial refund for that, and I was also able to sell a few of the parts that I didn't want to carry on to the final build. And what this left me with was a motherboard, CPU cooler, 8 gigs of RAM, a terabyte hard drive, a whack ton of fans and a broken case, all for £70. The motherboard is an X58A UD5 from Gigabyte. Now this is by far not the worst motherboard on this platform, and despite the PC it was in possibly being the most disgusting PC I've ever had to clean out, like seriously, I had to take this down to my garage in order to clean it because it was so filthy. Like honestly, what even is that? It was vile, but the heat sinks and the thermal pads were in really nice condition, and yeah, genuinely pretty impressed considering what it came out of. And when you use the price that I paid for the bundle of parts and factor it down to work out what the motherboard cost, I'm equating this to about £30 for the board, which is a crazy price considering they go for well over £100 no problem all the time on eBay. The system came with an i7-920 which I promptly sold and instead picked up an X5650 Xeon. This is a 6-core 12-threaded CPU, and on this platform you can overclock the Xeons, and these very easily get to 4 GHz and beyond, making them an absolute great deal. So I picked one up off of AliExpress for only £15, that's right, £15 for 6 cores and 12 threads on an overclockable CPU. This platform really is fantastic if you can get a decent price on a motherboard. The CPU cooler was also included in that original bundle of parts, and I think it factors to about £20 worth. It's a Corsair H50, I think. It's one of the quite old generations of CPU water cooler, but despite this it still works perfectly fine and it's going to perform well enough for us to get a decent overclock out of our Xeon. Again, in that original bundle we got 8 GB of RAM, so this is a 2x4 GB kit of 1333 MHz RAM from Corsair. But being a bit more of a high-end system, I chucked in another 4 GB stick there. That's just a 4 GB Kingston stick I got off of eBay a while ago for £7. I think the RAM itself factors to about 10 in the original build, bringing us up to £17 for 12 GB of RAM. Onto the graphics card, the big dog. What did I pick up? So I ended up going with a GTX 980 Ti. That's right, 980 Ti. So I found this on Gumtree from some guy in Wales who was happy to post it out to me if I paid for postage and PayPal fees, which brought it up to £217, but I was not going to argue on either of those counts because that is still an insane price for this card. It's a triple fan cooler from PNY and it's in really good condition. I'm not even going to have to take this apart to clean it because there's hardly any dust on it, which is kind of a shame because I like doing that, but hey, if it's in really good condition, I'm not going to complain. As always, storage is so personal. It's really up for you to choose what you want, not just based on your use case, but what you're happy and comfortable with using. And for me, that means a 120GB SSD for Windows and all of my programs, as well as a larger hard drive to store all of my games and larger files on. The hard drive is a 1TB WD Black, which factors into about £10 from the original bundle. And the SSD is a Kingston V300 120GB that I got off of Spock for £30 posted. The power supply gets a bit iffy. So the previous used build I did, the £285 Sweet Spot gaming PC that I'll put a link to the video for in the description below, I actually sold that PC to somebody who wanted to Part-X their old PC to bring the costs down. So the power supply came out of that system, and I'm factoring £20 for it because despite the fact that it is a nice 650 watt from XFX, it's actually had a really bad whining fan. And it's actually a common fault of this unit that XFX used an absolute junker of a fan in it. It's also a 135mm, so a 140 doesn't quite fit in. But of course we're going to be replacing it with a 140 anyway, so we're going to do a bit of an interesting mod to get that in, and we'll see that later in the build. On to the final piece of the puzzle, the case. So I'm actually going to use the case from the original system bundle that's broken, and I'm not going to include this in the £70 price that I ended up paying because the case is broken and I did get a refund for it because of that. So I'm just going to count it as free. Now it's broken to the point that you can't close the side panel to save your life, and you can't really get expansion cards in because that rear panel is crushed in a bit. So what I was originally going to do was just fight to get a graphics card in there and then leave the side panel off and it'd all be kind of cool and ghetto. But since this is an ultimate build now, that's just not going to cut it. So instead we're going to be cleaning this case up, bending it back into shape so it all fits together properly. And because those side panels are kind of scratched and tatty now, we're not just going to clean them up, but we're going to respray them to make this case look beautiful again. That's not just some cheap case, that's an Antec 1200. That is a really high-end expensive case from back in its day, and it has some amazing features in there. I think it's a perfect match for this build if we can get it to look gorgeous again. Now I think that brings the total price of the system to about £359, which is a lot less than I was expecting to pay for this system. And that's basically because I pretty much got good deals across the board this time, but I still don't think they're unreasonable deals, and I still think that you can find them yourself if you do a bit of searching. But we also have our work cut out for us still because we have to finish cleaning up that case, we have to bend it back into shape so it fits together, we have to respray its side panels, and we have to replace the fan on that power supply. So let's get started on doing those and building this system. Oh, I am so looking forward to benchmarking this PC. Let's start with the case. First of all, I actually forgot that it was damaged before. The bending it back into place worked really well, and okay, I know I'm biased, but I think it looks fantastic now. I think if I was going to do something different next time, I'd probably paint the front bay covers grey as well, just to bind it all together a bit more. But as it is, I think it looks pretty damn good with that two-tone effect of the grey side panels on the black case. And yes, I put a £2 LED strip I got off of eBay in there. It's not going to affect the price of the build really. It was literally £2 off of eBay. And I mean, come on, look at it. I couldn't help myself. I had to put it in there. It looks so freaking good now. And another thing about this case is I'm actually going to be keeping it and using it in my home server build. So I'm going to be building a home server, and this case is basically perfect for it for several reasons that I'll explain in that video. But I don't know when it's going to hit the channel because I just don't know when I'm going to get a chance to build it. So if you want to see that video, then I think you know what to do. Please send me some 2TB hard drives so I can actually get it built. The X5650 overclocked to 4 GHz, no problem, and I even managed to push it to 4.2 with the temperatures staying in the 60 to 70 degree range under synthetic load with that old crappy water cooler on there. Pretty impressive considering this is a 6-core chip overclocked pretty hard, and that's a pretty old banged up CPU cooler, and it wasn't even getting that loud. The graphics card overclocked pretty good as well. We managed to get that 980 Ti to over 1500 MHz. Now, if you overclock any 900 series or Maxwell card, then 1500 MHz is actually a pretty good milestone to hit. And especially with the 980 Ti where it has so many more CUDA cores rammed in there. And with that massive heatsink with triple fans on it, the temperatures were staying really nice, and with the custom fan curve I put on there, it wasn't getting too loud either. Really happy with the results from the overclocks here. Finally, let's get on to the benchmarks. Like I said before, we're going to be running them all at 1440p. We're rocking Quad HD on this bitch, and we're going to be benchmarking Grand Theft Auto 5, Total War Warhammer, Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, Battlefield 1, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, The Witcher 3, Cinebench, and Firestrike. We are getting all of the benchmarks done, but before we do that, we're going to have to move my main rig so we can hook up the system to my 1440p display behind me. So let's get cracking on that before this video becomes a fucking two-parter. bullshit. Shot him 5 times. I didn't think it'd be this good. I mean, holy shit, it was insanely good. 80 FPS in PUBG at 1440p, about 100 FPS in all of the other titles at 1440p high and ultra settings. That is some crazy performance. And I'm sure you were worried, because I was definitely worried that the base performance of this processor, just the IPCs, wouldn't be good enough to hold up in those modern titles. And when I saw the Cinebench score, it was concerningly low. But that just didn't transfer to games really at all. In fact, I was so surprised at the performance that I had to take the graphics card out of that system and put it in my main rig to see how the X5650 compares to newer hardware. So this is with an i7 5820K, that's 6 cores, 12 threads, overclocked to 4.5 gigahertz. And okay, with the exception of Grand Theft Auto 5, which did see about a 35% improvement in frame rates, but I think that was more of an optimization problem, because literally all of the other games saw an average increase in frame rate of 6%. 6 years of CPU innovation translated to a 6% improvement in frame rates. And that's just because most of the load is on the graphics card. Because we're running at those higher settings with that higher resolution, the CPU doesn't factor into it too much, because it's such a graphically intensive workload. And so you can get away with these older CPUs with these really high-end graphics cards and still get amazing performance, as long as in-game you're creating this graphically intensive workload for the GPU to burn through. And you're not looking for like 300 FPS in CSGO or something. Going into this build, I really wasn't sure if I was going to recommend it for straight gaming. I really thought it'd be more of a workstation build. But having seen the performance, I was so wrong. That CPU doesn't hold back shit. And it paired so beautifully with the 980 Ti that I would definitely recommend this build and this X58 platform for gaming. If you're looking to put a build together, then just keep an eye out for one of those X58 motherboards. The deals, they come around every now and then, and you just have to keep an eye out to look for them and pick them up when you get the chance. It's all about getting a decent motherboard at a reasonable price, and you can have an absolute beast of a system on this platform that I would happily use for video editing, although I might want to upgrade the RAM for that, as well as you could run it as a home server, or thanks to that 6-core Xeon, you could even run virtual machines so that you have a beast of a gaming PC running alongside a home server simultaneously. And that's what this build is all about. It's about those options and all of the possibilities for your system, but with none of the compromises. I think that wraps it up for this video. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It was so much fun working with this system. And if you haven't already, then please check out my channel, have a look at some of my other videos, and consider subscribing. And if you've already subscribed, then thank you so much for supporting the channel. I really didn't think it would grow this much, this quickly. It means so much to me, and I'm gonna keep making videos, keep putting them up here for you to watch. But that's it for now. This has been Frank Jaeger with Jaeger Tech. Have a good one. This CPU is actually like one of those old guys at the gym, you know, the ones that they're kind of frail and you're worried they're gonna hurt themselves, but then they just get on the bench and start lifting like toe to toe with you. That's literally what this CPU is like. This CPU can lift. No!
You know, I love 1v1 siege battles.